Infamous isn't exactly the kind of game you guys would expect me to like, but I actually really like this game series. It has a good story in each game, as well as a lot of fun powers to use, and a bunch of other stuff that makes the games great. Now, I decided to compare them today. However, I consider the first game in the series to be the worst out of the trilogy. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not that good. But I really like Infamous 2 and Infamous Second Son, so I decided to compare the two of them to see which one is better. So with all that said, here we go. Now, both Infamous games have a lot of memorable characters to them, and have both pretty enjoyable, but it's not easy to compare Infamous 2 and Infamous Second Son. One big reason is just how similar the characters can be, but not in the traditional sense. Cole McGrath and Delsin Rowe, the main characters of both the games, are pretty much polar opposites of each other. Cole is a lot more serious of a protagonist, but at the same time he knows when to lay back and can be sarcastic at times. Delsin's a lot more laid back and likes to joke around a lot, but he can be serious when he needs to be. How about secondary characters? Zeke is Cole's best friend, and while he does seem kind of like just a guy who lays back and goofs off, he actually can get serious when he needs to be, and can actually be very helpful in supporting Cole on his missions. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Delsin's older brother Reggie, who is serious and a cop. However, he does help out Delsin throughout the way, and is supportive of his younger brother. Well, he becomes supportive of Delsin. Towards the beginning of the game, he gets really paranoid about Delsin and his powers, and kinda just wants to lock up any other people with powers causing trouble, but he gets better as the game goes on. Now, as for villains, in Infamous 2 we have Bertrand, and I've already described how much I hate this guy, but the thing is, they really did make up for it in the final battle with him, where it's so satisfying to take him down. An Infamous Second Son has Augustine, who rules over the town, but unlike Bertrand, she's not as despicable with her actions, and she actually has a decent motive behind what she's doing. And just like Bertrand, she's pretty satisfying to take down. On this, I'd probably go with Second Son, just because I like Delsin better than Cole and Augustine better than Bertrand. I will say it was kind of handled much better in Infamous 2 when all your main characters, and not just the ones I mentioned, are with you through the whole game. While in Infamous Second Son, Fetch and Eugene disappear until the final conflict once you've done a mission with them. But that's really more so a story issue than anything. Okay, I'm not going to be around the bush here. Infamous 2 is the better story. It's not that Second Son has a bad story, but Infamous 2's story is just a lot better. Mainly because it has so much going on. It has the impending threat of the Beast, the quest to collect all the blast cores, helping out the people of New Marais, overthrowing Bertrand, rescuing Quo, Zeke and Cole's friendship, and a bunch of other things. This game has all those cards and knows when to play each one of them perfectly. Second Son doesn't have a bad story, but it's a lot simpler. The premise is that you need to go into Seattle to steal Augustine's concrete powers, so you can save all of the denizens of your hometown who have been infected with her concrete shards. It's a basic story, but it works, and has some other elements going into it, not just overthrowing Augustine, but also the relationship between Delsin and Reggie, which actually has a pretty touching moment that I won't spoil, as well as him helping Fetch and Eugene, or corrupting them. Either way. Second Son does well with the story that it has, but it's just not nearly as good as Infamous 2. Overall, I'd have to say the electric powers would probably be my favorite set of powers throughout the entire Infamous series. But I can't deny the sheer variety that Second Son gives you. Basically, in Second Son, unlike the first two Infamous games where you only had electricity, you don't have electricity this time, but you have 4 different powers that you unlock along the way. You have smoke, neon, video, and even at the end, concrete. And each of these powers has a bunch of their own different abilities, and each one offers a pretty unique playstyle. Granted, concrete you don't unlock until after you've beaten the final boss, and the others you have to unlock throughout the game, but hey, that's still a lot more than the originals did. So in case you couldn't tell, Second Son no doubt wins this one. This might seem like an odd choice for a category, but the town is very important in any Infamous game, as it's your own personal playground to complete missions and just goof around with your powers. Now, for this, I'd have to say Infamous 2 wins. Now, I will give Second Son this. It is kind of interesting how you're essentially playing in a real-life city of Seattle, but a lot of the stuff really feels the same. Although, I will give it credit, it was pretty cool to climb to the top of the Space Needle, fight a bad guy, and then vandalize it. On the other hand, Infamous 2 has New Marais, which is a lot more interesting of a city. It's based off of New Orleans, but the nice thing about it is that there's a lot of variety in it. I mean, it's got areas like Flood Town, which admittedly was kind of annoying, but there's also Bertrand's Gas Works, as well as just different parts of the city, where they be the nicer parts of it, the crummier parts of it, or some of the parts of it by the swamp. Heck, in one mission you even go through the swamp. Actually, several of them. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure New Marais is actually bigger than Seattle. That's probably due to the fact that Infamous 2 has a lot more missions than Second Son, but either way, I still like New Marais a lot better. In terms of optional content, Infamous Second Son is a lot better. Basically, in the regular Infamous, you just had, some side quests here and there, which were pretty good, kind of kept in the spirit of the main missions of the game, but Second Son takes a different approach that I really like. It has you eliminate the DUP from each sector in town, basically having you do a bunch of things like knocking Augustine's drones out of the sky, destroying the conduit detection points, not to mention destroying their mobile command vehicle and keeping their security cameras from spying on you, as well as destroying the control towers that mess with your signal. Not to mention, with all the different powers that you get throughout the game, it makes these tasks pretty fun to complete. My last category for this list is the karma system. For those who don't know, the karma system is a big point in Infamous. Basically, you can choose whether to be the hero or the bad guy in the decisions you're making, and Infamous 2 by far wins this one. It has you make a lot of decisions throughout, most of which changing what missions you play. Typically, the good guy option is represented by Quo or Zeke, while the villain option is represented by Nyx. Heck, even in the city, you can find ways on your map to get either good or evil karma by doing various different actions. Another thing I like about the karma system in this game is that it's not all black and white. I mean, obviously they do define both a clear good and evil path, however, typically both of them have their merits to them, and it's not always so cut and dry. The last decision in particular is really choosing between two equally bad decisions. As for Second Son, oh boy did they screw up with this one. There's a whopping 5 karma moments throughout the entire course of the game. Oh, but that's not all. Only 3 of them even impact the story, and only 2 of them impact which mission you'll pick. Probably the worst one is the decision at the beginning of the game. Basically, Augustine's interrogating you, and you can either keep quiet and sacrifice the tribe, or confess and save everyone else in it. However, if you confess, Augustine doesn't believe you and goes on to attack the rest of the tribe anyway. So, regardless of which option you picked, this outcome was still the same. Granted, it makes Delsin look a little more heroic or villainous depending on which one you pick, but even still, the end result is the same. I will give credit where it's due that they set him up a bit more cinematically, but it's still not nearly as good. It kind of feels like they wanted to put them sort of in the background to make way for a lot of the new powers, which is understandable, but it still gives Infamous 2 a way better karma system. So in the end, these games tied. However, it's not hard to see why. You see, the thing is, it's kind of like the whole Epic Mickey 1, Epic Mickey 2 thing I mentioned in Top 5 Most Underrated and Overrated Games. Infamous 2 has a far better story, missions, town, and karma system that really make it worthwhile, not to mention a longer story mode, while on the other hand, Second Son gives you a lot better optional things, and especially just a lot more stuff to do and a lot more variety with what you can do. Honestly, if you had to make me pick which one I would like better, I would pick Infamous 2 in a heartbeat, but then again, that's just personal preference really. Infamous Second Son has a lot of things to like too, and comparing them like this, they're pretty much equal. I'm Defoffilizer, and whichever of these two games you liked better, I hope you enjoyed this video either way.